Episode 64. This week we cover Elaan of Troyius. Not that bad of an episode. This one loosely based on Shakespeare. They based it on the Taming of the Shrew. The Enterprise got ordered to pick up a ambassador from the planet Troyius. Then they were going to move over and pick up an ambassador from the planet Elaan. And then they were going to go back to Troyius, where the ambassador from Elaan would marry the leader of Troyius, and that was supposed to bring peace between the two planets. So it was a diplomatic mission. Kirk was a little bit kept in the dark by Starfleet what the exact mission was. It was only when the ambassador from Troyius filled him in that we got the entire mission. The only problem was the ambassador, or Dolman as they called her, from Elaan, named Alana, or I guess the planet was a loss, and then she was Alana, or something to that effect. She didn't want to marry the guy, was very angry. He had her security guys go to the ship first, then they were ordering people around. Kirk didn't like it, Spock didn't like it, but they kneeled down and they were being ordered around by this woman. Kirk reluctantly agreed with the being bossed around. Then he took the ambassador out, and the ambassador from Troyius explained both planets had mass weapons of destruction. They could blow each other to smithereens, so they had to marry the two planets together so it would reduce the chances of that happening. That was the idea behind it. But then he couldn't get her to cooperate. She was angry at everything. They moved her into Uhura's quarters because it was the biggest quarters apparently. She didn't like Uhura's quarters. Didn't like the food, didn't like the water, didn't like the ambassador, didn't like Kirk, didn't like anything. She's throwing stuff, screaming. The ambassador from Troyius tells Kirk he gave up. He didn't want to continue on. He's like, just forget the whole thing. Drop her off and we'll go back to my planet. Kirk's like, you got to do something. You can't just not follow through. Use a different approach. So the guy was like, that's a great idea. While he's trying to think up of a different approach, Spock sees a shadow out in space, something kind of trailing the ship, so he deduced that there's a ship following them. So then Kirk gets summoned back to the quarters of the Dolman, and they found the poor guy from Troyius stabbed in the back. Stabbed in the back. They had to get him to sick bay. The Dolman, she was like, well, I didn't like him, so I stabbed him. I don't see the problem here. Well, Kirk said he had to teach her the etiquette and how to behave properly so they could have that marriage. She didn't want to have the marriage. But Kirk insisted. They started smacking her around. Started smacking her around a little bit. Then she kind of liked that. The ambassador from Troyius, he's in sick bay, and he tells McCoy, oh yeah, this lady cries because of her race. Their tears will act as an aphrodisiac essentially. So be careful of that, the guy said at random. Well, when Kirk goes back to give her a lesson in courtesy, she locks herself in the loo. Kirk's trying to scream at her. And then she comes running out, she's like, why does everyone hate me? And Kirk's trying to explain it, and she's crying. Gets all over Kirk's hand. So then Kirk starts an affair with this lady who is engaged to be married to the leader of this planet they're going to. Typical Kirk. Then they have one of the guards from the planet Troyius go down to engineering. He's trying to booby trap the ship. He kills the guy by jabbing him in the eye with his hand. It was a little weird, but that happened. They get his communicator signal. They figure out he's calling a Klingon ship. So they go down there and they're going to arrest the guy to try to figure out why he was calling the Klingon ship. But then he shoots himself with a phaser. Security guard was like, "Oops, sorry." And he tries to give an excuse, but Kirk cuts him off. He's like, "I wonder why he was calling the Klingons." He figures the Klingons must have something at stake, and that's why they're trailing them, and that's why they had a guy on board as a spy. Well, Kirk keeps having this affair with the girl. Spock and McCoy show up, and they're like, "Hey, did you happen to touch her tears?" And Kirk was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Uh-oh." So McCoy's like, "I better find an antidote, even though I've been told there is no antidote. And I don't know anything about this race of people, so I'll just blindly be guessing." That's what he said. And the Klingons start attacking. The ship got rigged to blow up if they go into warp. And they got no backup to lithium crystals, apparently, so they're in huge trouble. Huge trouble. But then, Spock, at the last second, figures out that a necklace that the planet of Troyius gave to the dolmen had lithium crystals in it. He's like, "Hey, can we have this necklace?" And she's like, "Sure, I guess." Well, they take it. Ship gets warp power and phasers and torpedoes back, and they escape the Klingons. Everything's fine. And the dolmen asks Kirk if he really wants her to go marry the other person. He does. He sure does. So they're like, "Well, bye." And he's like, "Well, bye." And then that was pretty much the episode. Just a couple of well byes. Some interesting notes in this one. The lady that played the dolmen was, as far as people know, the first Vietnamese-born actress on American television. She was born in Vietnam, went on to be in St. Elsewhere and several other shows. Knots Landing, Dynasty, I believe. She was fairly well known. And also, it was one of the very, very few times that all 7 main cast members were in a single shot aboard the Enterprise. All in one shot for a few seconds, all 7 of them. It was rare that they all 7 were in one shot, but they managed to accomplish it. Well, pretty much, that's episode 64.